Good day, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. Let me turn on my camera so we can see me. There we go. That's Tim. Let's see here. What are we talking about today? One second here. Oh, there we go. That's what I want to show. There we go. That's our material today. We're going to talk today about what happens when somebody doesn't pass the PMP exam the first time. It's a very challenging exam. There's a lot of intricacies to it. It does test you. It tests your endurance, both mentally and physically, and it does also test you emotionally. And so a lot of people going into it are not prepared. Now, before we talk about this first, let's mention me a little bit more. I've been teaching for a little over 16 years now. I have taught going on 7,000 people. I meet about 100 to 150 new people who are just learning about project management and want to pass the exam. And consider this. One of the industry numbers that are very solid and have been predictable over the last decade and a half are the fact that 95% or more people who go and attempt the exam the first time, as long as they go through formal preparation with an expert like myself, have a 95% chance of passing. That's not bad, is it? Well, let's say that I talk to 100 people a month. That means that 5 people a month are generally, according to normal distribution, not going to pass. I like to talk to these people. Okay, there's reasons why. One of the reasons why is I have no ego and I'm always learning. I want to hear from them what they did that everybody who passed generally tell people how to prepare. I take it from the experts and I listen to them. But today I'm going to talk about the other experts, the people who had the, again, unforeseen and regretful experience of going into a very hard exam, which they probably prepared very hard for, and still not passing. We're going to talk about why this happens and what happens when you go to attempt it the first time. Of course, we can all think about, what's going to do to my confidence, when should I be taking it and all that. But what we're going to do is actually apply a different methodology. It's a little bit different from when you take the first than you take the second. You're more prepared, aren't you? And also, you know not only what you're up against, but you also know what did not work. And so we're going to talk about what you need to focus on and what you don't. And we're going to talk about specifically focus and confidence, okay? Now, focus and confidence are interesting. Everybody comes to me and says, how much do I need to memorize? And that's what we're going to have to talk about, because it's not all memorization. I'm going to spend most of our time today talking about focus and confidence, but if you want to, we can talk about the role of memorization. We can talk about other tools and other techniques that we can acquire and apply in our preparation. Now, just because you did not fail the first time doesn't mean this is not good. This is great advice to give anyone, but at the same time, I've created this structure and I've created this mindset that seems to give pretty good results for the people who pass a second time. This is why people failed the first time. I studied enough. I memorized enough. Well, There's a problem with that. This is not a game of memorization. It's a game of preparing to behave as a project manager. So you don't just have to memorize facts and figures and math and be able to apply them. You have to understand them, and you have to use them to solve real world problems. This surprises people. 80% of the questions that you're going to run in on the exam are going to be situational, which means you're given data. Here's the context, here's the environment around you, here's the question, or here's the issue you need to solve. And what do you do? What do you do now? What do you do next? Now, you can assume you're going to have to understand quite a few things, right? Where am I in my project management processes? Where am I in the project life cycle? What do I have to work with? What are my options? And that's going to tell you how you prioritize and how you select the best answer. So it's not just memorizing some flashcards and repeating them. That's a piece of it. But it's knowing how and when to apply them at the right time. And there's only one way to do this, and we'll talk about that in a minute. People going into the exam are surprised by the environment. It's very clinical, right? It's very clean, and the lights are very bright, and it looks like a library, a hallway in a library where you have a bunch of study cubicles, right? Little desks with walls on both sides, and there's a terminal. And this is very controlled. All of your materials are locked up in a lockable cabinet, and the only material you have is paper and pencil, and they give you access to a 6-function or a standard calculator. Well, guess what? A lot of people don't prepare with that. They're looking up the answers or the questions as they're going through their practice questions, and they don't get this repetitive experience of what the sense is. Now, intellectually, we can understand what this environment is, but until you're in that environment, or until you recreate that environment and practice within it, you're not going to really understand what you're up against. However, I do tell people who are preparing to take it for the second time, congratulations, you now know what you're up against, and we now can prepare properly. It's very easy to lose track of time. Time is a serious constraint on the exam. You have 4 hours, and it is timed, and you have a little timer on your test terminal that counts down how much time you have left. Now, that's all the time you have, even for breaks. The timer never stops. You can take a break, but it takes away from the amount of time you can use solving questions. The questions are 200, they're random, and they're selected as the proctor turns on the terminal and sets up your exam. So you have basically a backlog of questions that you're going to eliminate for 4 hours, which means 1.2 minutes per question. Now, we can assume some take less, some take more, but that we're going to talk about later. All of the questions are, like I said, they have a little bit of background information. We can call that the context or the scenario. They have the real question, what is the issue I'm trying to resolve? And they have 4 and only 4 options. And those options can all be right. They may all be viable options, but you have to prioritize. They may all be wrong, and you still have to prioritize. There's only one correct answer. Now, there is something you have going for you. You count all the questions that you get correct as a point, but you don't get any points taken away by getting them wrong. So if you're running out of time near the end of the exam, answer as many questions as you can. And that's a strategy I give everybody if you're running out of time. And please take this to heart. I know many people who have passed the exam even when they ran out of time. It's not a problem, but it's a fact that losing track of time and lack of formal time management leads to distraction, and it can waste time. Not only that, but if you manage time properly, and we'll talk about this a little later, it gives you an opportunity to gain confidence, right? If you're in control, you're going to feel confident. Now, it's going to take a little practice, but there's confidence. Again, that later. The one comment that I hear from everybody who did not pass the first time, I doubted my responses. Tim, I changed my last answer, and I shouldn't have. I second guessed myself, and I think to myself, there's something important there. I'm doing research on this right now, and I hope in the next 3 to 5 years I understand this more fully. But I give this to you as something to think about. If you've been studying 5 to 8 weeks and you're preparing and you have a reasonably good score and you're practicing almost daily, doubting your responses is going to be counterproductive, isn't it? You're going to be correcting at least half the questions you doubt. You're going to be correcting them and you're going to be marking them incorrect. So I recommend everybody going into an exam like this, don't doubt yourself, especially if you've invested so much time in preparing. So that's why I've found people generally fail the PMP exam. We can talk more about this. There's a lot more details in here, but that gives you a little bit of context for what we're going to talk about next. There we go. Lack of understanding of the role of confidence, lack of the understanding of time management. And we're not even talking about memorization here, is it? It's actually taking control of your testing experience. And again, that leads all back to confidence. I really, when I started training, didn't understand the role of confidence in this preparation. And I have a huge respect for it. Here's what you have going up for you, going up against you now. Okay, you failed the exam the first time. Now, there are 4 things you want to think about. Number 1, how do I measure progress towards a successful exam? Okay, it didn't work the first time. I thought I was ready, and now I don't know how to measure I'm going to be ready. We're going to have to think about a different way to do it. Instead of setting a schedule and creating a sense of urgency, how about if we have a metric that we can measure against? That's a generally accepted metric. Okay, let me explain this. A lot of people, when they start their preparation, say, I'm going to set a milestone out 6 months in advance. And if I get close to that milestone, I'll be worried. That's a sense of urgency. I need to get working on this. It creates a sense of excitement, creates a sense of, I have to get something done. But is that what we want? The second roadblock is, how do I know I've measured enough? How do I know I've memorized enough details? In a previous webinar, I demonstrated that you're never going to memorize enough material. You can't. And in fact, you have to prioritize the material in order to just, preparing for the exam. The questions themselves don't just come from the PMBOK. They are validated, well, they're created by PMPs like me, experts who have signed up and volunteered and taken an obligation and commitment for this. And they're actually validated by 2 academic references, which you can consider what? Professors, right? People who have committed their lives to being experts in this certain area of management. And so there's no way, there is no way. Now, if we were just talking about schedule management, yeah, in 2 or 3 years, you could become an expert like that. But we're talking about schedule, cost, quality, risk, people, leadership. You know how long it takes to become a good leader and to understand even what leadership makes? We're not going to do that. So not in 5 to 8 weeks, and certainly not in 6 months. It's not going to happen. So how do we know when we have memorized enough? That's why I studied. That's why I started listening to these students. I noticed trends from the data, the results of the exams compared to the way they prepared. That's what we're going to do. And that's how we're going to measure progress. And that's how we're going to know when we've memorized enough. And it's not just memorization now. It's not just that. It's problem solving. You can do this for anything, right? For instance, let's say we turn this preparation into a quality exercise, right? What do you do in quality? You don't improve quality. What do? You remove defects. Instead of counting up, you count down, right? Instead of saying we have 80 to 90 correct, you say every day, I only got 20 mistakes. I only got 18 mistakes. I only got 17 mistakes. Now, consider this. What if you went back and you analyzed the mistakes you made? Now it sounds like a Six Sigma exercise, doesn't it? All of a sudden, you can bring all of your quality tools to bear, right? You can prioritize. Do I have categories? Is there a pattern? You can actually look at the specific areas that you and you alone have issues with. And so you can start looking at these type of data. Now, the beautiful thing is the PMP class itself teaches you how to do this. So a lot of us trainers say, why don't you use the skills you're learning in project management and apply it to the preparation of your exam? And this is exactly what we mean. Now, I'll give you those data points that I was talking about a little bit later, okay? Right now, let's just leave that aside. Now, we're still talking about roadblocks. Alternatives. What if? Okay? A lot of people who failed the first time did not predict failure. They predict success, and there was no alternative. I am very, very optimistic. I say 95 to 98% of the people who go through these classes are going to pass. And, you know, we can look at the data, we can talk about this, and it generally works out really well in that manner. But there are going to be a few. What does that do? What does that do to your plans? Are you going to lose your job? Is it going to have a major upset in your life? People who have a major life decision that hinges on the PMP have an additional burden. Now, it's a 50% good burden and a 50% bad burden. The 50% bad is that I'm afraid to look at the alternative. It is so scary. Well, it may take a conversation, but again, just like every other decision in your life, you want to be prepared. You want to have a plan. What if? And my best plan for what if I fail an exam, whether it's to my children, my peers, my students, whatever it is, take a break, look at it in the grand perspective, take it for what it's worth, a milestone, it's not the end. And when you're ready, we'll begin. We will begin. Preparation for an exam like this is not done in isolation. I've known 3 people who have actually cracked open a book, studied for the exam, and passed it. They are incredibly unique, those people who do it. I have a lot of respect for them. The greater body of people either work in an expert environment among peers, or they're peer-based. Now, peer-based generally has about a 75 to 85% probability of getting you through the exam. And again, this is one of the reasons why you go with an expert-based training program. So, looking at alternatives, you would benefit from an expert, especially an expert who knows, how to work with people, who can put a good plan together if they were to fail, and put fail in its perspective. In the world, in the results of the universe, what does it do? Yeah, it's going to hurt. But then again, growth is a beautiful thing. We don't grow where it's fun. We grow where the roadblocks are. And we push the roadblocks, and we invite our trusted advisors to help us push and move the big boulders. And that's where our greatest growth is. The other roadblock is, how badly do I want this? I see it time and time again. There are people who speak up in my classes, and they speak up way too much. They talk over me. They challenge me. They tell me I'm wrong. That's all right. I don't need people to tell me I'm right. I've done the research, and I've talked to enough people, and I've studied. I know what's right. And it's oftentimes not what I know. I've corrected myself so many times, I have no ego. I wish I had no ego. But I do know that people who sit back and just go through the classes are not going to pass the exam. It's the people who challenge me, who sit there. They're struggling. They're frustrated. They know they want this. I recommend generally about an hour a day preparation, about 5-8 weeks, and you should be good, okay? That hour a day should be set in working through practice questions, random ones. And like I said, challenging yourself in the real exam. The people who really want the PMP credential, they don't do it an hour a day. They do it in 2, 3, 4-hour blocks every single day. They lose sleep over this. They lose dinner. I'm not saying you have to do this, but I've seen the people who really want something. They're driven. They're driven in a way that others aren't. They're willing to commit, okay? Now, this is what's interesting. You can actually generate commitment. It's called motivation. If you can connect the success of the PMP exam to fulfillment of a personal need, you're going to find your motivation. What do I mean by that? Well, we could talk about Maslow, right? Fulfillment of physiological needs. I'm going to lose my paycheck. Fulfillment of my safety needs. My life is going to be constantly in chaos, and I'm never going to have any predictability. Fulfillment of my social needs. I'm not going to go to work on a regular basis and be around people. Okay? If you can connect preparation of the PMP exam with something that motivates you and you personally, that can actually overcome that really easily. But again, people who tend to be ready to take the exam early have their own motivation. They've found their quote unquote why. Why do I want this? Articulation of things, and not just having a broad general why, I want to be a project manager. No, this is going to enable me to work on a side business until I can actually do something worthwhile and contribute back so my family can be proud of me, I can be proud of me. That's when we're getting to real motivation. That's when we're getting to real commitment. It means something. This is not a game of memorization. It's a game of solving problems and issues. And the main issue that you're going to have in preparing the second time, the first time, or even the third time taking this is, how badly do I want it? That's the issue that you really have to solve. So, as you prepare for the exam the second time, we have to understand this exam better than we did the first time. I've said the exam tests your knowledge and the ability to solve the problems. The problems are set up in such a way that it forces you to think as a project manager. You have to apply your understanding of morals and ethics. You have to apply your understanding of business and business acumen. You have to understand your ability to lead and manage people, and you have to understand the technical aspects. And all of these come to bear. So it's a broad range of understanding and knowledge, and you have to apply them. You have to figure out within 1 minute what you're applying to solve what problem. Time management is both your friend and your enemy. You're never going to have enough time to finish this exam properly. You're not going to be relaxed, and we know we make better decisions when we're relaxed. You're not going to have any more than 1 to 1.2 minutes per each question. And you know, if we could, and I've demonstrated to myself, within 2 to 4 hours, I can find the right answer. But that's not what the exam really sets us up for. There's another thing going on inside your mind. It's called self-talk. We can call it other things, you know. Socrates called it the eudaimon. Other psychologists have called it the internal narrator or the internal voice. It's both your friend or your enemy. However, it can be managed. This is a little voice inside your head, and it says, you're going to fail, you're going to fail, you're going to fail, you're going to fail. Somewhere along the line, your subconscious or your conscious threw this sentence out, and this internal narrator just repeats and repeats and repeats. It's there to repeat anything. Now, a lot of motivational speakers say, give it something happy to think about. I'm going to succeed. I'm going to succeed. I'm going to succeed. You know, right? I'm the greatest. I'm the greatest. I'm the greatest. And it echoes inside your head, right? Well, I have something for you to consider. One of the best tools I can recommend for people who prepare is a set of flashcards. And I ask people, when they have a concept they don't understand, write the concept on one side of the flashcard and a short description or definition or 2 or 3 words that they can associate with it. Like planning. Planning is where you're working with the actual actions and steps, and the PMBOK calls the planning definitive. So if you find yourself doing that, just reach inside your head to your narrator and just tell your narrator, planning, definitive, and actual actions and steps. And it'll start repeating that until it has something else to glom onto, right? Or how about this? Let's put the third and the fourth, the fourth and the fifth bullet, the last 2 bullets together. How about in time management, You stop every 30 minutes because you're going to be watching the clock. You're not going to break your focus per se on the questions, but you'll be able to lean in and you get to look at the clock, right? And every 30 minutes, you create a milestone that says, I'm going to capture the amount of time I have left, and I'm going to capture the number of questions I have left. And you can actually calculate this, and you can do a benefit to cost ratio, right? How many minutes per question do I have left? And that's going to tell you your progress. It's going to tell you also your schedule performance index, which is your velocity going through the material. Working through this in a very careful manner takes about 30 seconds. It doesn't take a lot of time from your 4 hours. But every 30 minutes, if you do this, it gives your narrator something else to think about, and it gives your narrator something else to worry and repeat about. Isn't that beautiful? All you have to do is give that internal narrator something else to discuss, and it's off and running. It's a mechanism inside all of us, and you can use it to your advantage. Now, let's talk about this milestone every 30 minutes. There's two things going on, okay? We're going to talk more about focus here in a minute. But when you're in a 4-hour test session, you can't think of it as going fast, okay? It's like comparing sprints, 600 meters, 300 meters, 100 meters, to running what? Running a marathon, right? And that's what we have to do. And if you compare marathoners running to sprinters, they use a totally different methodology, don't they? So we're going to have to look at that too, except we're going to be running intellectually. We won't be running physically, but there are physical repercussions to that intellectual running, and we have to consider those. What you don't want to think about. When should I be ready? Take that off the table. Your progress, your analysis of your progress should be the only determinant as to when you tell yourself that you're ready. It's not you saying you're ready. It's not an expert saying you're ready. It's the way you prepare and the data you receive from analyzing that preparation will look for it. Am I truly made for this? Yeah, this is humans. We are made for this. We're made to be patient. We're made to forestall rewards. Sure, right now in our society, what do? We get our rewards immediately, right? Smartphone goes ding, we go right to it, and we get instant gratification. But for over 40,000 years, we haven't been made this way. We're genetically predisposed to forestall our rewards. And it's all right. In fact, if you do, it's like eating a meal. What happens if you wait an extra 30 minutes? What happens if you don't take a snack before you eat dinner? It tastes a little better, doesn't it? Same thing with everything. I'm not saying it's better to fail first on the exam. I'm not saying it's better to take the exam a little later. What I'm saying is we're made for it. We are genetically predisposed to forestall our gratification. Isn't that interesting? Another thing we need to really consider is self-talk, that internal narrator. You can actually get too involved in working with this and too obsessed with this. And all of a sudden, it gets in the way of your problem solving. Okay? It's going to be there. It's one of many, many, many tools. People spend entire lifetimes trying to get rid of this. And the other behaviors we have. And some things, this is just the way humans work. And it's not going to help us to try to work around it. So what we do is Instead of thinking about them as hindrances, think of them as potential allies, right? The heavy boulder makes us stronger. The narrator can be used to repeat, and the problems we get wrong can help us prepare. Let's talk about focus. When I say focus, I mean staying on task, right? Keeping an idea in your mind and working on it, working through the problems, working through the issues, working through the alternatives, and leading up to a decision, okay? That's focus. Generally, what does it take? We have 20 to 22 minutes where we can have an extended focus on a certain idea in our head, right? That seems to be my limit. And then all of a sudden I come up for air. I have to think about something else. My mind just works this way, and I've tried to change it. I've tried the meditation. Meditation basically says, okay, here's my focus out here. It doesn't get rid of it. It just abstracts it. It moves it away, but it never goes away. It's part of being the human animal. Our attention spans are just here in the way it is. And you're going to get this, and a lot of people who are preparing the second time say that they were frustrated because their minds would wander. Yes, it's the human dilemma. It's not something for us to remove or change. It's something for us to balance. Maybe instead of every 30 minutes, you can work on every 20 to 22 minutes. Again, we're not ignoring our issues and problems. We're using it to our advantage. And when you find yourself getting a little distracted, step back. Now, what could cause that distraction? Our eyes get dry because we're staring at a terminal, right? The tension in our shoulders. If you see my body language, it's horrible right now. I should be standing straight, right? With my spine properly aligned and all that. Even that in 4 hours, you're going to find yourself tensing up. Your muscles are going to go like this. It's not anxiety. It's excitement. And the physical response of excitement is identical to the physical response to anxiety. And so you can't tell the difference. And you think you're getting anxious. How do I actually get rid of this? Well, when your eyes are dry and you feel yourself curling up, you have a set of muscles around your neck and down your back, across your shoulders, right? Okay, so what you do, and this is what my trainer taught me in 2003, sit back, you don't have to meditate, close your eyes or focus on a different part of the desk so your line of focus is different, your eyes are basically stretching themselves. And then through relaxing through about 5 or 6 breaths, realize that you're holding tension in your neck and shoulders. And once you feel that tension and you can actually imagine it, just move a little bit. Notice I'm not moving a lot, just a little bit. And all of a sudden you get these tingles. These tingles are important. Those are endorphins that are being released. Okay, we actually are rewarded through 40,000 years of evolution for pushing towards a finish line. That last burst of energy, right? That's where this is coming from. We stretch and we relax. And again, we're extending the length between us and our reward. And when we do this, we're rewarded. And that's what those little tingles are. All animals do this when they're running. Plains animals like hoofed animals, right? Impalas and deer and bison and all those, they run, 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 run. And after they stop, they relax, they take a few breaths, and what do? They take these shivers. And these shivers release the tension. Now, it's physical tension for us, but our intellectual tension. And that's all you have to do. And if you do that, all of a sudden, you're ready to get back to work. Now, it's going to take practice. So in your practice sessions, I recommend that you try this out. It may not work for you, and you want to make sure that it does work for you. But at the same time, many people have said that this is great. Okay. Now, we have a set time where we focus, and we have a set time when we lose focus. We cannot change that, okay? I want to stress that over and over again. If you don't think it's long enough, we can build in strategies to take advantage of that, right? Maybe that focus tells us we're sprinters as thinkers. So we're going to have to figure out how to change a marathon into a bunch of sprints. And how we're going to do that? Through practice, through daily review of practice questions as if we're in the real exam. If it is long enough, managing to our focus leads to control, which leads to confidence, which leads to success. Isn't that interesting how all this builds on itself? We start off talking about focus, now we're talking about confidence. Let's talk a little bit more about confidence. Confidence is not feeling good. It's the ability to, through the use of repeated experience, guarantee a higher probability of a preferred outcome. Okay? Let's try this again. You do something enough and you get a certain outcome, you have a reasonably high probability to expect it in the future. That's why we practice. And we practice as if it's the real event. And if we do this enough, when the real event occurs, we are ready. My friend teaches rock climbing, and he teaches people how to slip properly on the rope, because everybody's going to slip someday. And he takes them to a climbing gym, and he says, slip about 6 inches, see what it feels like. Okay? Slip a foot, slip 2 feet, slip 3 feet. And he helps them build strategies so when they do slip on the ropes when they're out on a real mountain, and they will, they'll be ready for it. And you can do the same thing in preparing for the test. If you see 80% consistently in your practice scores, you'll come to expect an 80% successful outcome. And as we do this, we gain confidence, we grow confidence, we expect confidence. I like this last bullet. It took me a while to craft it. Practice on top of this doesn't just give us confidence. It gives us automatic responses. Habits, right? Problem-solving habits, analysis habits, all the habits that you need to do things automatically. And if you can actually prepare for certain types of questions on the exam, and you can automatically respond, guess what? You're managing your time more effectively, aren't you? So it seems that practice actually is an outcome that's going to help us here. So what have we learned from all this? Practice first, okay? I haven't mentioned this, but in other discussions, I talk about this a lot. When you're scoring consistently about 80 to 85%, not just once, but many times, this is a signal for you to schedule your exam. Don't schedule it and then prepare. Prepare, and then when your score says you're ready, you'll be ready. And I also say consider scheduling out 2 to 3 weeks. It gives you an extra amount of practice to increase that confidence a little bit. And it also gives you a little time to consciously focus on staying on task and discipline, where you don't have to worry about remembering things, acquiring new knowledge, and refining your understanding. Okay, you can work specifically on increasing your focus and your discipline. And practice with this self-talk. Okay, it's amazing what you can do. I used to give this no credence until I started working with it, until I started asking people to try this out. And the people who take this seriously have actually come back and say, you know what? This is amazing. Every 30 minutes or so, analyze your remaining time to question ratio while you stretch that major back and neck muscles, okay? And also remember, preparation and the test, they're marathons. So don't look for immediate change, look for progress. And I always say, if you don't have progress, reach out to us and we can analyze the data together. It's amazing. Looking at your own progress, you can find out things. But looking out across the progress of thousands of people who have prepared, you can start seeing patterns. You can take advantage of those patterns, can't you? Okay. Now, if you're curious, we can continue talking about this. I can open up for questions, which I prefer, but I can also utilize the last 10 minutes. I do want to remind everyone, this is not just preparing for the exam. This is not just preparing for any exam. These are tools and skills that once you master can actually help you in anything. Decisions you make, directions you're about to go. It's incredible how these skills can change your life. Now, that's me, okay? That's my experience. The only way you're going to actually see whether these tools and skills are valuable is if you try them on. Here's some sources of material that I got a lot of my material from. We can talk more about that. If you're interested in our further webinars, or if you're interested in talking to us about the PMP classes, please do. I always set aside time for people who are interested in increasing their level of understanding and their ability to control the world around them. And I will set aside time for you to help you with that. And with that, I'll sit back and wait for questions. Do we have any questions? It's a lot of information. Now, while I'm waiting for questions, I want to ensure you this is not my idea, okay? This is what I discovered by people coming to me and talking to me about this. For some strange reason, they opened up to me and they said, I'm afraid or I'm scared. Once you hear somebody saying those words, you know they're real. And those are the people I was listening to. And those are the people who were ready to get their PMP credential. The ones who were willing to admit that they either needed help or they didn't know a way to get around what they saw was insurmountable. I'm here to tell you, I've seen over 7,000 people do this, okay? Well, actually, it's going on 7,000. It's over 6,500 right now. This is not insurmountable. Even if you fail the first time, there's some mechanism in place that we can put together and we can figure out that works for you and you alone, or is general practice. You can take this, and if you have failed, I have a reasonable expectation you're not going to fail. And anyway, it's more important that you have these skills and that you learn these. It actually is greater benefit than just a credential. The credential is important. It's going to move you forward. But these skills will actually make your life better and make the people around you better. And that's what a leader is. That's what a leader does. We embrace these things, and once we learn something that works for us, we turn around and we teach others and we help them grow, and we hope that they're better than us so that they can teach others and teach others and teach others. One of the things that I did not have a chance to talk about was, today we've talked about, how do you prepare the second time you go into the exam, right? What about the first time? Well, I said these all will work, right? And generally they do. But let's make it a little simpler for you, okay? There's a time-honored method to generally prepare for anything, okay? And we call it, in different societies, different things. In Greek civilization, back 2,000 to 3,000 years ago, they called it the heuristic. Today, we call it the scientific method, or problem solving, or Deming-Schwartz, plan, do, check, act, right? All of these fit. It's some framework within which we can gain repeated success through capturing data, analyzing, and then expecting results. Now, the heuristic goes even further. It says you need to review the information. You need to find the full domain of the knowledge that you need to work with, right? We could even talk about martial arts within this. And this is learning the forms in martial arts, right? Okay, so you learn the forms. The second level, the Greek philosophers said, was practice. And we covered that today too, right? Set aside time daily where you practice the forms in martial arts, or in PMP preparation. What do? We sit down as if in a real exam against random practice questions with only paper, pencil, and calculator. We analyze the results. Again, in a martial arts dojo, you're going to have an expert. In your practice, you're going to either use material or mentors for your experts, yeah? And we prefer that you have somebody like me or other trainers who are able to actually, facilitate this clarification and the clarification of doubt. And then you practice again, and you practice again, and you practice and practice and practice until you're attaining a certain level of performance. And then what do? You take the exam and you're done, right? No. You've reviewed all the material, you practiced, and now what the Greek experts said you do is refine, and you spend the rest of your life in preparation. That's right. And that's why the PMP credential is set up the way it is. You gain your PMP, and it demonstrates a certain level of understanding and ability to apply that understanding. And PMI, by granting you that PMP credential, says they'll stand behind you and they'll tell the world you're an expert and you're able to do things. And then PMI turns around to you and says, you know what? We're not going to make the exam a requirement anymore for you. You're a PMP. You don't have to do that again, as long as What do? Number one, you continue to study. Number two, you act, you behave, you teach, you mentor, and you learn as an expert. And you promote, you write white papers, you do blogs. And if you do all these things, guess what? You get credit and you retain your credential. Isn't that a beautiful system? That's what we're built around. 6,000 to 10,000 years of successful acquisition of not just expertise, but mastery. And it's not just Western civilization that teaches us. It's all civilizations in one way or another has embraced this model of learning knowledge and applying it. You're following in strong traditions, everyone, and we support you in that. You're not alone. It's a difficult road, but along that road, reach out and you'll find many friends.